I was Robert's perfectly attentive, obedient girl for 10 years. But the day he decided to settle down, he brought back a girl. Robert's friends called her Rob's girl. I asked him, is she as obedient as I am? But Robert said, no, she's a little girl who needs protecting, not like you, so subservient. She doesn't need to be obedient, because I'll spoil her. I walked away without hesitation. The Maybach parked outside the door for a long time. Now, I suppose, it's time I gave him his due. The day Robert decided to retire from that life, he still talked to me. I went along with all of Robert's requests, just like before. We were in sync, something Robert had praised before. After that, Robert clung to me like he was going crazy. We lost track of time, from daylight till dark. When he finally finished, I looked at him helplessly and asked blankly, are we going to die tomorrow? I had never seen him look so wild in 10 years. Robert pulled me up and held me close. A swirling ring of smoke was exhaled into my face. Sarah, you're not that dependent on me anymore, are you? If I broke up with you, would you still cling to me like you did 10 years ago? Robert sounded so serious, it made my heart jump. We started as a couple. In our second year, Robert confessed his preferences to me. I went along with everything he wanted and accepted his decisions, and later, I grew dependent on him. Over 10 years, I'd completely figured out Robert's temperament. He didn't like people who were too clingy. Back then, I used to cling to him every day and got yelled at often. Later, I learned to be smart, managing this clinginess with just the right amount of restraint. He liked contrast. While being compliant with him, I also had to maintain that rebellious streak in myself. That is, being obedient to him, but showing my teeth to others. Just like now, nestled in his arms, I answered with a smile, I'm 29 now, not that little girl from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I would have gone crazy, demanding to know why, and clinging to him every day, begging him not to leave me. But now, 10 years later, I was 29. I wouldn't lose control like that, but my heart still tightened for a moment. Robert extinguished his cigarette with his fingers, gazing at me intently. Then let's stop here. Sarah, we're both nearing 30. We can't keep messing around like this. It's time for us to return to normal life. After Robert spoke, I froze. In my life plan, Robert had always been there. Although our titles for each other had changed over the 10 years, our daily interactions were no different from any other couple. I had long considered Robert my fiancé. 10 years of dating, I thought we would definitely have an outcome. Sooner or later. The moment Robert decided to settle down, I actually thought he was going to propose to me. I didn't expect him to break up with me instead. I turned my back, a tear silently falling, but I still forced a casual smile and got up to leave. Robert, however, wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me back into his embrace. His warm hug made his words feel even more unreal. Did you hear me? I lowered my gaze and didn't answer. Robert didn't press. He carefully cleaned me up, just like before. During this, Robert said again, I've recently met a girl. So, there was someone else in his heart. Even before he finished the sentence, I already knew the ending. But I felt that whoever bowed their head first, lost. I didn't want him to see my vulnerable side. I also didn't want Robert to look down on me, thinking that someone nearing 30 was still as dependent on him as a little girl. I subtly wiped away the tear from the corner of my eye, then smiled and asked him, is she as obedient as I am? Robert used to tell me he liked obedient dogs. But now, he raised an eyebrow and shook his head. She's not like you. She's a little girl who needs protecting, not like you, so subservient. She doesn't need to be obedient, because I'll spoil her. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I lowered my head to avoid Robert's gaze, only to see the mess on the floor and the things Robert had bought for me. What did he mean? She's a little girl who needs protecting, not like you, so subservient? What did he mean? We can't keep messing around like this. It's time to return to normal life. These were all things Robert liked. He dressed me according to his preferences for 10 years, turning me from a little girl into a compliant, opinionless good girl. Just as I got used to this special identity and lifestyle, he felt I was different from other girls. I wanted to scream and question Robert. To ask him why he treated me like I was nothing. Could 10 years of feelings be thrown away just like that? But his phone vibrated, and he immediately covered my mouth, then shot me a look. It meant for me to kneel down and be quiet. The call was from that girl. Robert, I have a competition tomorrow. I'm so nervous. Can you come be with me? Robert still left, going to find that girl, Emily. After he left, he called me and instructed, I'm too busy these days, so I won't be staying here. You can pack your things. I'll be back in a week to change the locks. Let me know if you need anything. I didn't want to leave Robert, but I didn't want to show it too much, so I just asked him dully, are you sure? Robert was silent for a moment, then laughed. You're a smart person. I think I've made myself clear. I asked, what about the future? We can still be friends. We talked on the phone in silence for a while. After that, he probably arrived at Emily's place. He just quickly said goodnight and rushed off to Emily. I really couldn't understand how two people who once loved each other could become friends. I followed Robert for 10 years and ended up with nothing. A girl's most beautiful 10 years, only exchange. And for a sentence, we can still be friends. I didn't sleep that night. Staying up all night in the empty mansion made me think of 10 years ago. Sarah, think about it. Do you want to be my girlfriend? Robert was a notorious school bully. Before that, I had only heard of his exploits and reputation, but had never seen him. That day, he bought a bouquet of red roses and blocked me after school. Robert's friends were also watching from nearby. I don't know you. I gripped my simple white tee and jeans and answered him. But Robert pushed me against the wall, shoving the red roses into my arms, leaving no room for refusal. But I've taken a liking to you. Give me a week, and I'll make you fall in love with me. It only took 3 days for me to fall in love with him. 10 years ago, he was so confident, flamboyant, and unrestrained, the most dazzling presence in the entire school. His family was well off, and his grades weren't bad either. Countless girls chased him, but he specifically took a liking to me. Because he said I was obedient, had contrast, and was fun to play with. At first, I didn't understand what he meant until he confessed his preferences to me, then I understood. But I loved him desperately. The day he confessed to me, I was already smitten. In these 10 years, we had been through so much and done it so many times. Gentle ones, rough ones, ones I craved. Robert promised me that after he completely retired from that life, the first thing he would do was marry me. So I never thought about leaving him. I even planned my future. But now he was finally settling down, and the first thing he did wasn't to marry me, but to find another girl. Now I was 29, nearing 30, and it was indeed time to return to normal life. After all, that man had been waiting for me for a long time, just waiting for me to give him his due. Before leaving Robert, I decided to see him one last time. I also planned to return the mansion coup. YS and the gifts he gave me. I didn't dress according to Robert's preferences anymore. I gave up a whole closet of sexy dresses and high heels. I grabbed a simple white tee and jeans I hadn't worn in a long time. I tied my hair up and put on light makeup, looking very much like I did 10 years ago. This was so different from my usual image that when I entered Robert's private club, many people didn't recognize me. Robert's friends even joked from behind, well, student look, coming to the club by yourself? Not afraid of getting picked up? Maybe she's being kept by a client and is here to meet her sugar daddy. Don't a lot of bosses like the student look? Dressed so innocent, probably hasn't been around, huh? Want Big Brother to teach you? I turned around and said calmly, it's me, Sarah. With that said, Robert's friends instantly froze. They probably felt their words were too offensive and were surprised they had insulted me, so they were silent for a long time and didn't speak again. These guys used to call me Rob's girl all the time. From high school until now, it hadn't changed, but now it was different. I guess they probably knew about Robert and Emily. Indeed, someone stepped forward to stir things up. Sarah, we still think you and Rob are the best match. Emily is only 19. She's so innocent it's unreal. What does a little kid know anyway? Rob is just going through a phase. After this passes, maybe he won't like her anymore. Hearing their words, the self-mocking smile on my lips deepened. Emily was only 19. Just like when I first met Robert, I was also 19. Did he like Emily, or did he just like 19? Before the friends finished speaking, Robert appeared from outside, casually tossing a cigarette pack at one of their heads. What are you guys blabbering about? Robert's face was deathly serious, his mouth opening only for reprimands. My business with Sarah is none of your damn business to butt into. The lively private club instantly fell silent. These friends had been following Robert since high school. But what hadn't changed over the years was that these guys were all afraid of Robert. When he lost his temper, no one dared to say another word. Before, I would have spoken up to help them out, and today would have been the same. They were just. But before I could finish, the girl behind Robert peeked out, her eyes filled with curiosity, staring intently at me. Robert, is this the Sarah you told me about? She observed me for a moment, then said, Sarah's style is so similar to mine. But in the pictures Robert showed me the other day, Sarah was dressed very sexy. Hearing this, Robert's gaze finally fell on me. He frowned, scrutinizing my clothes. A simple white tee and jeans, hair tied up high in a ponytail, a huge difference from my usual look, but similar to Emily's outfit. Robert's eyes immediately showed suspicion. Sarah, are you deliberately imitating Emily? I carefully observed Emily. Her eyes and brows looked about 70 to 80% like mine. Her stubborn yet innocent look was exactly like I was at 19. I didn't know if Robert had found a replacement for his 19-year-old me, or if Emily had researched Robert's preferences and deliberately approached him. But no matter which it was, I didn't want to dwell on it anymore. What pained me more was that I had been with Robert for 10 years, and he didn't even have this much trust left for me. Didn't Robert know what kind of person I was? No. I bit my lip and replied stubbornly. Robert chuckled, suddenly put his arm around Emily's shoulder, and then looked at me with disdain. You're 29 now, that's an unchanging fact. Even if you dress like 19, you're not 19 anymore. Do you understand what I mean? I know you're not reconciled, so how about this? Robert didn't spare my feelings, saying openly in front of everyone, 10 years. Nom. Your price. I was stunned, frozen in place. A surge of nameless anger suddenly rose, making my hands tremble. It took a long time for me to calm down. What do you mean? Robert looked at me indifferently. After all, it was 10 years of your youth. I can't just let you follow me for 10 years for nothing. Name your price, and I'll transfer it to you immediately. 10 years, to be dismissed with a sum of money? His actions made me look like a gold digger who was only after his money. But Robert still stood there with his hands in his pockets, his face showing no ripple of emotion. His friends behind him exchanged glances. Emily, realizing the air was thick with tension, quickly interjected, Robert, Sarah didn't say anything. Don't be so fierce. Sarah will be scared. Robert squeezed her hand and comforted her gently. If I don't do this, I won't be able to completely break things off with her, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable thinking about this in the future. After all, very few people can accept a man who had a 10-year relationship. Robert used to protect me like that too. When did Robert's attitude start to change? When I first started dating Robert, he was still a troublemaking school bully. Many people wanted to teach Robert a lesson, and I became the best way to get to him. That time, I was kidnapped by a group of people from outside the school and taken to an abandoned building, and Robert was notified to come quickly. If he didn't come, these people would attack me. Robert was always arrogant. At that time, we had only been together for about 2 months. I thought Robert would never humble himself for me. But he actually showed up. He wore a vintage denim jacket and carried a baseball bat he had just picked up from a training field. He was chewing gum, raising an eyebrow at the group with disdain. I meant to let you guys off, but now I see there's really no need. There were over a dozen of them, all looking fierce and carrying weapons. But Robert wasn't afraid at all. Let her go first. Whatever issues you have are with me. The leader with yellow hair spat at him, Do you think I'm a fool? Today I'm settling old scores and new ones. If you can't beat me, you won't be taking this girl." He waved his hand, and the group rushed at Robert. Robert muttered, asking for it under his breath, and the fight broke out instantly. He fought 10 against 1, but still had the upper hand. When he rescued me, injured all over, I was already crying rivers. I told him he was stupid. Why didn't he call the police? But Robert said, "I won't put you in danger, not for a single second." I held his hand and laughed, my throat tight. "I thought you weren't going to come." Robert's eyes turned red. That was the first time I saw a boy cry in front of me. To be precise, he shed 2 tears. But they fell silently, heavily into my heart. "I can't lose you." Of course, I had to come. Later, Robert stole their family heirloom bracelet and gave it to me. I refused in every way, but Robert said, "Anyway, this bracelet is going to be passed down to the Robb family daughter-in-law in the future. I'm just giving it to you in advance. Whether early or late, it's for you." Seeing that I didn't dare wear the family heirloom bracelet, Robert saved up his allowance for several months and bought me an expensive bracelet. He said again, "They say a woman's first jade bracelet is very important, so I searched for a long time before choosing this one. The meaning is peace, joy, and health for this life." This bracelet had been on my hand for 10 years. The family heirloom bracelet had also been kept for 10 years. Now, it was time to return them to Robert. I gritted my teeth, pulling and tugging to try and remove the bracelet. My wrist turned red, and Robert watched, his heart aching. Just as the bracelet was about to come off, Robert panicked and rushed over to stop me. "What are you doing?" My eyes were filled with tears, but I still looked at him stubbornly. "This bracelet, and the family heirloom bracelet, I'll give them all back to you. Didn't you want to name a price? Consider these bracelets my return gift. From now on, we..." Before I could finish, Robert interrupted, his eyes red. "Shut up. He was the one who abandoned me, so why was he reluctant now?" For the first time, I didn't listen to Robert and finished my sentence. "From now on, we shouldn't see each other again." As the words fell, the bracelet was off my wrist. Along with the family heirloom bracelet in my hand, I stuffed them both into Robert's arms. The bracelet still held warmth. This deeply stung Robert. His eyes grew redder, and the emotions in them were too complex. There was reluctance, there was regret. But I couldn't read them anymore. What was this supposed to mean? Did he still have feelings for me? It suddenly started raining outside the private club. I sighed, and the 10 years I had spent with Robert replayed in my mind. My heart ached so much I could hardly breathe. "I've given you the things back. The box for the family heirloom bracelet also contains the mansion keys. They're all yours now." I turned and walked away, stepping into the rain. Robert chased after me, carrying an umbrella. He opened the umbrella and followed behind me, his voice urgent, "Let me take you back." Before he could finish, I quickened my pace, moving away from the umbrella. He wanted to chase me, but Emily's plaintive voice came from behind. "Robert, are you leaving? How will I get back?" As expected, Robert stopped there and didn't chase me anymore. My heart felt empty for a moment, but it quickly returned to normal. I took bigger strides, ready to walk home in the rain. What was I hoping for anyway? Hoping he would give up Emily and choose me? Just as I looked down in disappointment, another large black umbrella shielded me from the rain. Immediately after, I was pulled into a strong, steady embrace. The familiar scent of cedarwood filled my nostrils, allowing me to recognize his identity without even looking up. Behind me, Robert froze for a second, then roared in fury, "Who are you? Let her go!" A deep, magnetic male voice came from above my head. "Mr. Robert, perhaps you should take your little bird home, or she'll get angry. As for Susie, I'll take good care of her." Only that person called me Susie. My breath hitched, my heart skipped a beat. I quickly looked up at him, and our eyes met, his dark eyes filled with no obvious emotion, yet brimming with tenderness. I felt awkward and flustered, trying to pull away from him, but he held me tightly, keeping me under the umbrella. The large umbrella tilted towards me, leaving a large patch of the man's shoulder wet. He gazed at me like this, speaking slowly and deliberately, "Don't get wet, you'll catch a cold. If you move again, this umbrella won't cover you." I still obeyed David, not struggling or resisting anymore, and got into the red Maybach with him. I was 29 this year, and I had known David for 29 years. It was precisely because I knew him so well that I had a love-hate relationship with him. 10 years ago, I found him boring, gentle, and not my type. When I learned that the Sue and Gu families had arranged a marriage alliance, my head was spinning, and all I wanted was to get away from him. So I resolutely went to college in Willow Creek, specifically to be far away from David. In contrast, Robert and David were two extremes in personality. Robert was flamboyant, unrestrained, and rebellious, with an inherent swagger that deeply captivated me. I thought I had chosen true love and changed my predictable life. But I never expected that in my most vulnerable moment, I would run into David and be sent right back to where I started. Once in the car, I spoke stubbornly, "I'm getting in for no other reason than if I get soaked. My parents and brother will never forgive you." David saw that I was still as stubborn as before and couldn't help but laugh. I, however, looked away, embarrassed, not daring to meet his gaze. Just as I shifted my sight, I saw Robert standing by the road. He stood silently in the rain, watching the car drive away, unwilling and angry, not saying a word. And I suddenly remembered what Robert had said. We weren't young anymore, and it was time to return to normal life. Following him for the past 10 years was indeed a bit foolish. After all, my family had already arranged my future path. The plan was for me and David to study abroad together, return to inherit the family business, and then get married a few years later. But I secretly changed my major and went to school in Willow Creek with Robert. After that, I settled in Willow Creek and lived with Robert. My family never looked for me. I always thought they were ashamed of me and didn't want to contact me, but I never expected David to explain, "I told your parents not to look for you." I was a little surprised, and David continued, "Your parents were very worried about you, but I told them that once Susie had her fun, she would come home naturally, no need to rush. This was just a branch line of life you chose. Whatever Susie does, I will support." I felt even more humiliated. This wasn't coming home after having my fun. I had clearly been thrown out, abandoned by a man. But I lowered my eyes in disappointment, murmuring, "Robert and I." Before I could finish, David quickly interrupted, "From now on, I don't want to hear anything about Robert. After all, no fiancé wants to talk about his fiancé's ex-boyfriend." At that moment, the atmosphere became silent. I awkwardly shut up and didn't speak again. David continued driving to his place. On the way, he suddenly said, "Robert isn't a good man. He didn't take care of you well in these 10 years. I want Ed to retort, to stubbornly try and prove that the man I chose wasn't so bad. But after thinking about it, I still didn't speak. Mentioning Robert again would only make me sad. "Susie, do you know the best way to forget a past relationship is to start a new one? Seamless transition?" I wished it were that easy. 10 years of feelings weren't a joke. I wouldn't get over it overnight. But if I started a new relationship quickly, maybe I wouldn't be so sad. The light ahead was red. David stopped the car, but I threw myself into his arms, forcefully pulling his hand to me. My eyes red, I hugged him, but David froze, his hand still on the steering wheel. I could only order him dully, "Hold me for a while." David couldn't help but laugh, but he still held me tightly. 10 years ago, I hated David's reserved and rigid demeanor. He was expressionless in everything he did. Even when he accompanied me on thrilling rides like roller coasters and pirate ships, David's face showed no ripple of emotion. I was curious if he had a poker face. But now, I actually felt that David had a unique charm. It was precisely because he was cold and icy that it created a greater sense of contrast. David kissed me quickly. When his lips pressed tightly against mine, the string in my mind finally snapped. A burning fire ignited in David's eyes. Under his fervent assault, my body went completely limp at that moment, but a strange impulse kept surging in my heart. I pushed hard, and David's body fell back. The seat reclined at that moment. I straddled David, supporting myself on either side of his body with my hands, trapping him beneath me. I kissed David back, and a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. But soon, David also wrapped his arms around my waist, responding to the passionate kiss. Suddenly, the phone rang. I was about to hang up, but David glanced at the caller ID, saw the name, and answered it before I could. It was Robert on the other end. Sarah, I have something to tell you. Are you free to meet up in a few days? I couldn't respond to Robert, because David was intertwined with me, passionately. He kissed me fiercely, pressing me into his body with force. That rigid, icy face finally showed some unusual emotion. Robert seemed to guess what I was doing, and his voice instantly rose several octaves. Sarah, what are you doing? Suddenly, David picked me up, flipped me over, and pressed me beneath him. I gasped, and David said, Susie is very busy. I'm afraid she doesn't have time to take Mr. Roberts' call. From the other end of the line came an angry roar, damn it. If you dare touch Sarah, I'll bring my men over and kill you immediately. David remained unhurried, leaning in towards me. All right, I'll be waiting for you. After that day, things moved quickly with David. He made no secret of his fondness for me, and I tried to connect with him, to become part of his life. These days, I had been staying at David's place. Whenever I thought of Robert late at night, I would have a small drink, and David would drink with me. He held his liquor well. Even when I was completely drunk, David could still sit there, serious and composed. But who would have thought that after drinking, I would take advantage of him and just strip David's clothes off? That guy wasn't shy either. Whatever I did, he went along with it, and we ended up sleeping in the same bed that night. When I woke up, I felt a bit ashamed. After all, things had moved too quickly, and I felt it wasn't right. But David said, we're adults. It's normal. I rolled my eyes and ignored him, thinking I definitely couldn't drink tonight and had to stay away from David. But late at night, I couldn't help but mix myself a drink, and I couldn't help but engage in deep conversation with David. A week later, I had gotten somewhat used to this life, and I even proactively invited David to join me for a drink. That night, I happily changed into a lace slip dress. The wide V-neck didn't cover much, but I no longer cared. Instead, I called out loudly downstairs, what are we drinking tonight? Whiskey? Brandy? Or the water of life? Before I could finish, I glanced down and saw 3 people downstairs. Besides David, there were 2 others, Robert and Emily. My breath hitched, and I instinctively wanted to flee. That feeling in my heart was still acting up. I didn't know if it was love or just not being able to let go. But no matter which it was, I didn't want to run into Robert. How did they get here? I turned back to my room, but David said from downstairs, Mr. Robert is here to discuss business, Susie. Come on down. Was David trying to assert his claim in front of Robert? I was silent for a moment, then immediately went back to my room, grabbed one of David's jackets, draped it over myself, and went downstairs to greet Robert. I suppose I was being petty. But I could see that Robert was also being petty with me, because he had a very large backpack. Inside were the special items he had bought me over the years. One bag wasn't enough, and Robert had thrown away quite a few, only picking out some representative items with meaning to bring over. Was he trying to remind me of something? Robert got straight to the point, Sarah, I'm here today not only to discuss business, but also to bring you some things. He unzipped the bag. Now that we've broken up, it's not good for me to still have these things. Robert was still so sneaky and cunning. He took the items out of the bag one by one, openly placed them on the table, arranging them neatly. It was like he was trying to remind me of something. Seeing this, Emily's face changed dramatically, a displeased look creeping into her eyes. David beside me didn't show any change. I suddenly remembered how Robert used to take these things out and arrange them neatly on the bed, and after arranging them, he would say, kneel down. Yo. You're not allowed to speak from now on. Seeing him do this again now, I actually felt a bit disgusted. Robert was the one who left me first, so why was he bringing these things now? Was he purely trying to gross out David and me? I couldn't help but laugh. Standing beside David, I looked at Robert coldly and said, "You should have just thrown them away. Like people, isn't it better to just discard them together? You really didn't need to come all this way for this garbage." I could see a flicker of anger in Robert's eyes. He chuckled disdainfully again, put his arm around Emily's shoulder, and said, "You misunderstood. I'm just going to marry Emily, so it's better to make a clean break from the past. Otherwise, Emily won't feel secure. After all, very few people can accept a man who had a 10-year ex." I finally understood Robert's purpose. He just wanted to show off to me, to show me how quickly things were progressing with him and Emily. He wanted to prove to me that no matter if I was seeing David, he also had a woman by his side. Unfortunately, my heart didn't stir anymore. Robert's scrutinizing gaze fell on David, and he said flatly, "After following me for 10 years, experiencing so many thrills, can you really accept something so bland? No wonder you can't forget me." Who was it that couldn't forget whom? After experiencing David, I no longer missed Robert. On the contrary, he came all the way here with Emily. Wasn't he the one who couldn't forget and wanted to assert his presence in front of me? I looked at David, who still wore that icy expression. Only the emotion in his dark eyes had changed slightly, showing a beautiful, morbid look. If it weren't for me, David would have already asked someone to escort them out. Why would he give Robert a chance to negotiate? I smiled and instructed Emily, "Before marrying Robert, I suggest you take him for a full medical checkup. After all, he's been in the game for a long time. He's not like you, a little innocent who hasn't experienced anything. It wouldn't be good if you caught something." With that, I linked arms with David, leaned intimately against his shoulder, and said softly, "Someone who's been out there is different from someone raised at home. You know everything about them, no need to worry about them having issues." "Robert, you can't be so sure. The 10 years I was with him, Robert often went to clubs and bars. You know those places aren't decent. With someone as wild as him, don't expect him to change." Robert was getting angry, but David spoke first. "Mr. Robert, if you are here to discuss business, you are welcome. If you are here to upset Susie, then please leave. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee what Mr. Robert and Ms. Emily might encounter tonight." David's expression didn't change, and he even offered a slight smile after speaking. He was always like this, saying the cruelest things in the calmest tone. Hearing this, Robert became even angrier. But I pulled David's hand and looked at him expectantly, saying, "We haven't had our drink yet tonight." David smiled. Robert across from us saw David touching me behind my back, which further fueled Robert's temper. He suddenly pulled Emily into his arms and smiled at David. "It's getting late. I wonder if Mr. Gu has a place for us to stay for the night. We can discuss business tomorrow." David glanced at him, said "Help yourself," and then took me away. The house staff arranged accommodation for them. I just followed behind David, heading back to the room for a drink. Whatever Robert wanted to do was no longer my concern. All I cared about was whether I could have that drink tonight and do intimate things with David. I hid in David's room for a while, had a few drinks, and then returned to my own room. That's when I realized Robert and Emily's room was right next door to mine. I didn't know if Robert did it on purpose, but it definitely bothered me. Because the soundproofing in this house wasn't that great, so I could hear everything Robert and Emily were doing next door. They were holding each other and saying sweet things. Robert used to say them to me too. They were wrapped up together after the storm. Robert used to do that with me too. Until 2 in the morning, Robert showed no signs of stopping, and I was getting annoyed. Just as I was about to go out and confront Robert, Emily's sweet reached my ears. "Robert, is this really okay for us to be doing this?" Robert didn't answer, just continued what he was doing. Emily asked again, "Why do you still have Sarah's things? Haven't you forgotten her?" My hand, which was about to knock on the door, froze in midair. My heart pounded, but I had to admit, I was also waiting for Robert's answer. I heard him give a cold snort, saying with extreme disdain, "Forget her?" "I was just trying to remind Sarah." Emily asked, "Remind her of what?" Remind her how pathetic she looked begging me not to leave back then. Remind her that even if she leaves me now, she was still subservient when she was with me. She's being pampered by David, but back with me, wouldn't she still be just a fawning dog? Her being with David now is just her being petty with me. If she hadn't forgotten me, why would she move on so quickly? Emily was probably tired, panting and leaning against Robert's chest. David, what kind of person is he? Robert evaluated him, boring, unable to satisfy Sarah. I laughed at the doorway, laughing at his ignorance, his arrogance, laughing at how childish he was for someone nearing 30. I wasn't like him, I wouldn't stoop so low as to show off a new man just to spite him. In other words, Robert wasn't worth me doing that. The reason things moved so fast with David was because we'd known each other since childhood and because I had developed a different kind of feeling for him. I turned and walked away. Before I'd gone 2 steps, I ran right into David. He looked at me silently, then pushed me gently away. He seemed angry. A barely perceptible ripple finally appeared in his calm dark eyes. I really wanted to know if someone as good-natured as him could also get angry. Thinking this, I grabbed David's hand, feeling mischievous. What's wrong? Jealous or angry? He had just showered, and the rising steam still enveloped him. A loose bath towel couldn't hide the perfect curve of his abdomen, and I deliberately teased him by pulling open the bath towel, revealing what was underneath. David was slightly startled, quickly pulled my hand away, and wrapped the bath towel tightly around himself. It's not like you haven't seen it before. David's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew darker. His anger was too obvious, making me back down. I quickly softened my voice to ease the tension. Did you hear their conversation? David's dark eyes darkened, and he nodded at me. But I said, then do you want to get back at him? As soon as I spoke, David pulled me into the room, closed and locked the door, picked me up, and tossed me onto the bed. During this, I noticed a deliberately suppressed desire in David's eyes. Soon, he stopped being tense, leaned over me, and breathed warmly, nothing I'd like more. Truthfully, 10 years ago, I wasn't completely without feelings for David. I even had a crush on him for a while. After our family's plans were revealed, I openly liked him for over a year. But a girl's heart is always so hard to understand. Even now, 10 years later, I can't empathize with my 10-year-old self. When I thought about spending the entire decades from birth to death with the same man, a strange sense of dread quietly took over all my emotions. I thought my best years shouldn't be wasted on the same person. So I rebelliously chose to escape. But I never expected life to hit me hard. The feelings of these 10 years were still wasted on the same person. And there was no outcome. Afterwards, David held me tight and asked somewhat resentfully, "Did you invite me in just to piss off Robert?" I held him just as tightly and laughed, "You're my fiancé. This is just our normal life. How could it be to piss off Robert?" The next morning, David got up to make me breakfast. When Robert saw me coming out of the room with David, his eyes instantly flashed with anger and disbelief. David ignored him, brushing past his shoulder on the way downstairs. But Robert questioned me, his eyes red. "Did you already have your next move lined up? No wonder you weren't crying, making a scene, or begging me to stay. So you had a backup plan all along." Then I have to ask, how badly was I played? Was it a little or a lot? Robert still had a hickey on his neck. How could he have the nerve to question me? Seeing me not answer, Robert asked again, his voice tight, "What exactly is your relationship with David?" My relationship with David could be anything, but it was definitely not something he could question or doubt. I thought for a long time and replied, "If you have nothing to say, you don't have to say anything." Is such an obvious relationship something you still need to ask about? Robert got even angrier. I turned to leave, but he grabbed me. His attitude softened for a moment. "Sarah, could you help me iron my suit and tie my tie?" What was this unreasonable request? I turned to look at him, then glanced sideways at Emily. "You have a woman by your side. Why don't you ask your little Emily's sister to help you?" When I lived with Robert before, I would iron his clothes and tie his tie every morning. I was good with my hands, the ties I tied were exquisite and neat, and the clothes I ironed were crisp and sharp. He was used to me serving him by his side. Was he missing me now? Seeing me ask this, Robert answered without hesitation, "A little kid doesn't know anything. She can't do it, and the ties she ties aren't as nice as yours." Indeed, as soon as he finished speaking, Emily silently shed a tear. I couldn't help but want to laugh. How could Robert be such a jerk and think it was okay? Praising his ex-girlfriend in front of his current girlfriend? I sighed and stepped forward, taking the tie from Robert's hand. Just as I was about to raise my hand to tie it for him, Emily ran out crying. I smiled and asked him, "Your little Emily's sister left. Aren't you going to chase after her and comfort her?" Robert responded indifferently. "Little girls have big tempers. Just let her stew for a while, and she'll come back on her own when she cools down." I was startled and stared at him intently. "Just like you did to me back then, right?" I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. It seemed he hadn't expected me to bring up the past voluntarily. He was about to say something, but I interrupted, just as clueless and unable to recognize good people. With that, I threw the tie down, turned, and went downstairs to find David, ignoring whatever expression Robert had on his face behind me. But I saw David, carrying the breakfast he had prepared for me, smiling slightly at me from the bottom of the stairs. He probably saw my reaction and was quite satisfied with it. The meal was unusually silent. During this time, David served me food, which Robert saw. But he laughed. "You still don't understand Sarah well enough." His sudden remark made David and I both look up at him. He poured me a glass of warm milk and pushed it towards me, thinking he was being considerate. "Sarah likes to drink milk and eat sandwiches in the morning. But you prepared pancakes and bacon. She dislikes that. It seems you don't care much about Sarah after all. You don't even know her preferences." He looked at me triumphantly, as if trying to prove something in front of me. But I laughed even more freely. David's lips curled into a contemptuous smile, and he responded calmly, "Susie prefers Chinese-style breakfast, and she's lactose intolerant." Robert was slightly stunned. "How is that possible? She drank milk with me for the past 10 years. He stopped halfway through his sentence. He realized it too. I drank it with him, I didn't drink it voluntarily. A trace of awkwardness crossed Robert's face. David didn't spare him any more face. "Mr. Robert, if you are here to discuss business, you are welcome. If not, please leave soon. After all, there are many inconveniences, and it's not suitable for you to stay." Robert glared at him. "What inconveniences?" David didn't answer but looked at me. I smiled shyly and kicked him lightly under the table, which Robert just happened to catch. He understood everything, and the anger in his heart grew even more intense. Just as he was about to explode, Emily called, "Robert, someone is following me on the way back." "I'm so scared." Robert froze, grabbed his jacket, and rushed out. "Baby, stay where you are. Send me your location. I'm coming right away." After Robert left, David's phone chimed. The screen lit up briefly, and I happened to catch the name Emily. Was it just my imagination? I answered myself with certainty. I definitely hadn't seen wrong. David actually had Emily's contact information. I suddenly realized something, put down my chopsticks, and stared at David. "Give me your phone." David subtly pressed the screen off. After hearing me say this, he was slightly stunned, then obediently handed me his phone. His calmness made me feel uncertain. I was about to ask him for the password, but David spoke first. "The password is your birthday." I said "Oh," and unlocked the phone. David then said, "I'll add your fingerprint and face recognition later." I ignored him and opened WeChat, finding Emily's chat window. The last message was from a minute ago. Emily said, "Robert is already on his way." Scrolling up, David and Emily had chatted quite a bit. It took me 10 minutes to read through all their conversations. I also found the very first message, which David sent to Emily, "Stay obediently by Robert's side. Don't reveal anything about me." I looked at David suspiciously, but he openly confessed, "Emily is my person." He didn't even delete these traces on his phone. This meant he wasn't afraid of me finding out. He had instructed Emily to dress like I did when I was 19 and to appear in Robert's life in a subtle way. The day Robert and Emily first met was after school. She wore a high ponytail, had a lollipop in her mouth, and carried a black backpack on her left shoulder. Just like I did back then. Robert was initially attracted by her similar vibe. Unexpectedly, Robert's old enemies showed up that day. Over a dozen people cornered him in an alley, nearly costing him his life. It was Emily who appeared in time, dragged him into a residential building, draped her school uniform over Robert, and pretended to be young lovers meeting up and kissing near the school to evade capture. After they left, Emily just waved goodbye casually and said, "Big sister saved you, no need to thank me." With that, Emily was about to leave, but Robert was captivated by her. Too similar. She was too much like my appearance, style, and way of acting back then. From that day on, Robert said he wanted to retire from the scene and return to normal life. When I saw Emily for the first time, I had already guessed half of it. Robert's infidelity must have been a deliberate setup designed for me. Emily's appearance was intentional, her clothing was deliberately arranged, and even the enemies seeking revenge showed up at just the right time. This was a trap set by someone. Robert fell for it, and I became the victim of this trap. I just hadn't expected the mastermind to be David. He had always been gentle and kind. Would he also do something so unscrupulous? David took off his gold-rimmed glasses and looked at me seriously, asking, "Will you hate me?" I couldn't distinguish if this feeling I had for David was love or some other emotion. But too many thoughts were swirling in my mind, and I couldn't give a precise answer. I only remembered that David had told me he liked me 10 years ago. But I rebelliously chose to leave him, and the last words I said to him were, "I don't want to marry you. I'm going to pursue my true love." With that, I resolutely ran to the station, grabbed Robert's hand, and boarded the train to Willow Creek to study. But I didn't hear what David said behind me at the time, "No matter how long it takes, you will come back to me." I did indeed come back to David. Back to face the person I wanted to escape from when I was young. To face his overly direct, fervent, headstrong, yet rigid love. I sighed, unsure how to face David. David's expression finally showed a change different from his usual demeanor. He panicked, his fingertips trembling, but he was carefully approaching me. "Susie, will you hate me?" I gazed at him. "You deceived me." David pursed his lips. "Then, what do you want to do?" After that, I left David for a while. I needed to go somewhere quiet to think carefully about the path ahead. David deceived me, and Robert betrayed me. When Robert learned I was leaving for a while, he frantically came looking for me. He sent hundreds of calls and texts, but I didn't reply to a single one. Robert even enthusiastically invited me to return to live in Willow Creek. I only left him with one sentence, "Robert, we can't go back anymore." Even if Emily's appearance was intentional, and even if she was someone David placed by Robert's side, it was still a fact that Robert cheated and fell in love with someone else. Furthermore, after contacting Robert, Emily had become completely immersed in the relationship. Before I left, I met with Emily and Robert. Emily didn't show any hostility towards me. She just smiled and said, "Sarah, Robert and I getting married as soon as I turn 20. I'll definitely send you an invitation." I didn't show any change in expression. Robert, standing behind me, gasped when he heard this. I looked past Emily's shoulder at Robert. His eyes were lowered, his face grew darker, and a hint of regret flashed in his eyes. The day he came to David's house and mentioned marriage, he was just trying to provoke me. But I could tell he didn't want to get married so quickly. Then congratulations in advance, but I still think marriage is pretty boring. It's better to have fun for a couple more years while you're young. Getting stuck on one person isn't worth it. I was trying to warn Emily that Robert wasn't someone worth trusting. She was only 19, and would only be 20 after her birthday. Marrying Robert like this was too reckless. Unexpectedly, as soon as I finished speaking, Robert agreed with me. "Yeah, marriage really isn't that interesting. It's more fun to experience a few different people." He then looked at Emily. "As for us getting married, let's talk about that later." As the words fell, Emily's face changed dramatically. She could probably already foresee what her future would be like if she stayed with Robert. After all, I had been with Robert for 10 years, from 19 to 29, and didn't get a perfect ending. She was 10 years younger than Robert. What could she possibly get? Perhaps, years later, Emily would become a second me. At the same time, I completely saw Robert for who he was. Someone like him would never settle down. Even without Emily, perhaps years later, there would be a different Emily coming into his life. Since he could be so easily lured away, it meant he wouldn't be content with the status quo. He would never obediently walk into the grave of marriage. If I got back together with Robert, I might experience another betrayal in a few years. Later, Emily and Robert had a huge fight. While they were arguing, I had packed my luggage and turned to leave for the station. After that, I didn't contact Robert or David for a long time. But I heard bits and pieces about Robert and Emily. Some said Emily threatened to kill herself, insisting on marrying Robert. Her impulsive behavior completely enraged Robert. So much so that he directly halted the wedding plans. Emily was just a 19-year-old girl, of course, she couldn't stand Robert's cold attitude. After that, she kept making scenes with him. Robert found her so annoying that he just broke up with her. Robert still couldn't forget me. He tried to find out where I was, contacted me multiple times without success, and finally went to David's place to ask about my recent situation. But David just got into a fight with him. Both argued, each believing the other hadn't taken good care of me. Meanwhile, I was driving across the country, too busy to care about what was happening over there. It took me a year to finally figure out what kind of life I wanted and what kind of man I wanted. And the answer was already on my way back. It was a bright, sunny afternoon. I stood before the familiar wrought iron gate, thought for a long time, and finally opened it. The interior was unchanged, just as it was when I left. Faint sounds came from upstairs. I quietly made my way towards the second-floor study. The man inside was on a conference call. While waiting, I felt a little nervous, but quickly calmed down. Only after the man ended his meeting did I gently push open the door. The crisp sound of a pen hitting the floor broke the silence in the study. The man looked up at me, his eyes filled with a turmoil I had never seen before. "Is this a dream?" His voice sounded like it had been scraped by sandpaper, his knuckles white from gripping too hard. I bent down to pick up the pen that had rolled to my feet, ink spreading in a dark bloom on the carpet. "What? You're not happy I'm back?" The end of my Sin 10. C held a tremor I hadn't even noticed myself. The wind from the window lifted the sheer curtains, carrying the faint scent of cedarwood from him, blowing towards me. He smiled and replied, "Welcome home, Susie." This was a familiar sense of security, and it allowed the wandering that had lasted over a year to finally find a shore to dock.